Hello students! Welcome to week 3 for COM 340 Rhetoric and Persuasion. This week we are looking at credibility and persuasion and how it relates to the course content. Our week 3 agenda tells us that we are reading chapter 6 and 7 of the course text. We're watching 3 videos related to some theories we are covering, which is elaboration likelihood model, persuasion and attitude change, as well as elaboration likelihood model in the central and peripheral routes. You're completing discussion board number 3, which is due on Friday, with the reply post due on Sunday, and your TAP assignment number 3 is due on Sunday as well. You're also selecting your topic for your critical assignment on the Persuasive Communication Campaign, which is due on Sunday. Discussion board number 3 asks you to write at least 300 words related to the idea of how persuaders may adapt messages to recipients of the ELM. We're covering ELM directly in this lecture as well as utilizing it for our TAP number 3, so it'll be covered very significantly this week. It looks at how messages should be adapted for high elaboration recipients and low elaboration recipients and how persuaders may want to influence them. You need to consider ethical concerns related to persuasive messaging and campaigns related to the peripheral routes of persuasion, and think about how your favorite television commercials can be used in peripheral route persuasion as well. Discussion board number 3 will make a lot of sense and be very relevant after you go through all of the videos, you continue watching this lecture, and go through all of the course reading. TAP number 3 asks you to look at elaboration likelihood model. It asks you to address directly what is elaboration and to what degree elaboration can be assessed. You'll do variations of this and looking at it from that perspective. You'll also consider the consequences of the central route persuasion and peripheral route persuasions. You'll look at each of those individually and determine how this theory relates to the ideas of persuasion and rhetoric within this course, and apply at least 2 outside sources to support them. If you have any questions related to TAP number 3, let me know. Your persuasive campaign topic. So I will, on the next slide, explain to you what is required in your persuasive campaign due in week 8. This week we are selecting our topic. This is the critical assignment, and so the critical assignment, it's not due until week 8, but we have assignments leading up to it. And this week, one of the assignments leading up to it is the campaign topic selection. So the critical assignment requires you to create a persuasive campaign over the course of the term that utilizes concepts learned, obviously, in the course content. The assignment will provide you with the opportunity to create a public service persuasive campaign. So think of a PSA, a public service announcement, something that relates the community to healthy eating, exercising, vaccinations, distracted driving, smoking, things of that nature. A PSA, a public service announcement about something that's related to the general public. We're going to complete this persuasive campaign in a number of ways throughout the coming weeks, with the final draft due in week 8. So it's very important to know that I want you to select your topic this week. What you'll need to do is select your persuasive topic for the campaign and write a 200-word rationale for your topic, providing at least 2 sources that support the need for you to develop a public service campaign of this nature. So look through and find some academic sources that tell me as a reader, oh, okay, we really do need to address this idea of distracted driving or extended use of smartphones for children, or whatever you think it may be. You'll also share some of your preliminary ideas for your topic that you want to use in your campaign to all support your rationale as to why this is a great topic for a public service campaign. Looking at persuasive campaigns, it's important to know that your campaign itself will include 5 sections. It will have an introduction. It will have section 1, which is on the topic, engines, and goals. This section describes the topic of your campaign, why it's reasonable, and things of that nature. Your second section will include audience segments, which will detail and analyze the audience that it applies to and the specific audiences you're categorizing. Section 3, which is really the guts of your paper and your campaign, will show all of how you will do promotion utilizing identity, credibility, and case building, and many tactics related to persuasive communication we're learning this semester. And then section 4 will tell you how you will activate it and use activation in the various events and messages you envision for the campaign. There also are sample campaigns posted within the course. You can look at them in week 8 or under the course information tab. At this point, you don't need to worry too much about the end results. It's more about getting to the beginning and selecting our topic to begin working on smaller assignments that all relate to this huge assignment that's due in week 8. I just wanted to provide you with this now so you can have some background information to know what the end result is. I know some people learn in a way that they need to know where they're going in order to get there. Well, this is where we're going. We're going to create this campaign, and it's going to utilize persuasive communication tactics we're learning within our text, as well as theories that we're learning this semester to help us persuade the public on some type of public service campaign that would be useful to an improvement of a behavior to the general public. So keep that in mind. If you're at all confused, contact me and we can hash out your topic together. It's important this week that we're going over elaboration likelihood theory, or EML. It's also referred to as the elaboration likelihood model. It is a theory. It's fit within, and you'll see a lot of these persuasive theories are fit within the socio-psychological tradition for communication theories, and the context focuses on the communicator. The communicator is doing the persuading. Petty and Capaccio are noted scholars around this theory in terms of originating it and really developing it within scholarship and research. ELT, or ELM, as it's referred to, contends and argues the probability that you will evaluate information critically. Essentially, the theory is a persuasion theory that tries to capture the probability that an audience member or a person will evaluate the information you're giving them critically. It's a persuasion theory. It predicts when and how you will and will not be persuaded by messages. It focuses on the communicator and how persuasive they can be in sending those messages, as well as the receiver and how critically they evaluate messages. So it tells us that all information is received via two routes. You either utilize your central route, where critical thinking always occurs, or your peripheral route, where passive thinking and tacit approval tends to occur. The central route is also referred to as high involvement processing, and the peripheral route is also noted in some studies as low involvement processing. Very important things to keep in mind. As we look at ELT, or ELM, as it's referred to in many senses, there's three types of motivations that allow someone to determine which route they'll utilize to get the information through to make a behavior or attitudinal change. So they tell us that it all begins with communication, a source, message, and channel. That moves to attention and comprehension. That's where we'll look at the three types of motivation. That's the persuasive factor. What type of involvement, diversity of argument, or personal predisposition does the receiver have to the persuader's communication that will allow them to determine what type of involvement processing will occur, high or low. Once that's determined, you'll either go through the central route. That's where you're thinking more critically. You're utilizing a high level of involvement in processing the information you received. You give some cognitive responses to question it. You're not just going to naturally assume or naturally accept the information as fact or truth or be persuaded to action based off of that. You're going to judge it, of course, across a lot of different areas. Then you'll have belief and attitude change, and then you'll have a behavior change. So the high involvement processing really requires just that, more involvement in processing information to determine how persuaded you will be. In this type of processing, it does make sense in terms of looking at it that it may take you longer to arrive at a decision. You may not be as easily swayed by people and their glittering generalities and things that they put into it, and you'll usually want to critically evaluate information on your own and utilize secondary research for that. Low involvement processing is the peripheral route. This is where you're more likely to accept information given to you based off of credibility or based off of the way that the information was received or what type of motivation was utilized, the involvement you have, the diversity of argument. You're less likely, since it involves low involvement processing, to seek outside information in determining how you should respond to a decision. Belief change does happen, and then behavior change happens, and then you'll have an attitude change from there. So you'll see that there are less steps in terms of that. We don't have cognitive responses to the information in low involvement processing. We typically accept the information for what it is, begin to have a change in belief through it, behavior change from that, and then attitude change from that. So as you work on these persuasive campaigns as we get into the coming weeks, it's important to keep this in mind. You'll see that oftentimes people that use the low involvement processing route, the peripheral route, may accept your information more easily than those utilizing the central route. So consider that when you're choosing audience segments and things. We covered credibility extensively last week. It plays a huge role in this week's information. So you can go back and refer to that in the week 2 lecture if you'd like. I want to highlight credibility and the use of it in ELM or ELT, the elaboration, likelihood, model, or theory. So it's important to know that people do pay attention to both routes. That's something we know, but usually they heavily favor one over the other. If the issue is personally relevant to them, they typically take the central route. If it's not so personally relevant to them, they'll tend to take the peripheral route. So if they're not directly affected by the issue, it's not something that will directly impact their lives or influence their lives, they will tend to take the peripheral route. If it's something that's personally relevant to them, they will take a central route. Thus, credibility is most important on issues where the audience is not personally involved. Typically, low involvement means that the source credibility is important. So the lower we use in our information processing, so if we're pushing things through our peripheral route, credibility plays a huge part because we're not checking out the facts for ourselves. If it comes from a highly credible source, we're tacitly and passively approving that through the peripheral route. So if a best friend, a spouse, someone you trust comes to you, they're very credible in your mind, you may not second guess their information and you'll accept it. High involvement means that the source credibility is not so important. So utilizing it in the central route means that you will look up the information yourself. So it doesn't really matter how credible that person is. You're going to do your own outside research and come to a decision. This was noted in William Benoit's 1987 study that demonstrated these two things. This study was about whether a computer class should be required of all students. There were two message variables, strong arguments and weak arguments. There were two source variables, expert source and a non-expert source. Those who read the messages were in two relevance groups. You will have to take the course, high relevance. It will be adopted after you graduate, low relevance. Those who were involved in the topic focused on the arguments. Those who were low involved focused on the source. So this was really fundamental in looking at and saying that credibility and high and low involvement in our processing, utilizing that central or peripheral route, plays a significant role on looking at credibility and persuasive communication. Really, really phenomenal. As we move through week 3, it's important to keep in mind that we are reading chapter 6 and 7. We're watching some videos related to persuasion and attitude change as well as ELM models. We're completing discussion board number 3, which is due on Friday with the replies post due on Sunday. We're also completing TAP assignment number 3, which is due on Sunday, and selecting our campaign topic, which is due on Sunday. So we do have a busy week full of a lot of information. If you have any questions, reach out to me early on. I look forward to interacting with you this week. God bless.